My name is Elise Rourke, and I will never forget the moment I told a judge in front of a packed courtroom, "That was my mother's chance to live, and you stole it." My father sat there stunned while the judge ruled in my favor and ordered the sale of everything, including the SUV he bought for my sister Lindsay, with the money I had sent to save my mother's life. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And have you ever trusted your family with something sacred, only to find out they betrayed you? Let me tell you how it all began. It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday brunch. We were sitting at the weathered wooden table on my parents' sun-soaked patio in suburban Phoenix, the scent of blooming citrus trees wafting on the breeze. The sky was that perfect blue it always seemed to be in early spring, when everything feels hopeful. But something in my chest had been pressing for days, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. "Did you use the money I sent last week?" I asked, my voice soft, trying not to cause a scene. My dad, Bruce Rourke, a former high school baseball coach with a wide smile and thinning hair, chuckled awkwardly as he reached for another slice of cantaloupe. "Well, honey," he said, not looking at me, "we got Lindsay that new SUV. She needs it more than we need another hospital bill." I blinked. Once, twice. My mom, Karen, sat beside him silent. Her face was pale, almost gray. She stirred her tea with a shaky hand and kept her eyes on the "I'm sorry," I said, the breeze suddenly feeling a lot colder than it had a second ago. Dad gave me that familiar, dismissive smile he always used when he thought I was being too intense. Like I'd just asked about grades at a barbecue. "She's been driving that old Corolla since college. The transmission was going, Elise. You wouldn't believe the deals they had this month." "The money," I said slowly, carefully, "was for Mom's operation." Bruce looked at me like I was being dramatic. "We figured she wouldn't. Did you even read her diagnosis?" I snapped. That got his attention. Finally, he looked at me. "Stage 2 doesn't always mean emergency," he said with a shrug, like we were talking about fixing a leaky faucet. "We're taking it one day at a time." Mom still hadn't said a word. I stared at her, silently pleading for her to say something, to correct him, to explain, to defend herself. But she didn't. And that's when the silence shifted. It wasn't just awkward anymore, it was damning. The clink of her spoon stopped. She set it down and folded her hands in her lap. I saw it then. The guilt in her eyes, the way she wouldn't meet mine. And it hit me all at once. The money I had wired, the careful wording in every message. For the surgery, for her tests, to help with treatment. I had been specific. I had made sure. $15,000. My entire savings. And they used it to buy my sister a luxury SUV. "I called Lindsay 3 nights ago," I said slowly, testing the ground beneath my own feet. "She didn't mention anything about the surgery. She was talking about heated seats." My father scoffed. "Well, she's been stressed. That car helps." I nearly laughed. Stressed? Was he serious? I leaned forward, eyes locked on my mother now. "You knew what the money was for." She looked at me then. Finally. "I didn't ask for it," she said, barely above a whisper. "But you let them take it," I replied, voice trembling but sharp. "I didn't know they were going to use it for the car." Bruce jumped in. "Don't make this about your mother." "No," I said, standing now. "It's entirely about her." The fork in my hand dropped to the plate with a loud clang. Somewhere in the background, a bird chirped cheerfully, oblivious to the fracture in the air. "You made a choice," I told him, my voice steady now. "You all did, and none of it was for her." I didn't yell. I didn't cry, but my hands were shaking. I looked around the table at the matching napkins, the stack of brunch pastries, the pitcher of fresh squeezed orange juice. It was a curated scene of togetherness. "A lie. You really believe she needed a car more than Mom needed to live?" I asked, directing the question not at him but at the silence between them. Bruce didn't answer. Mom still didn't speak. "I see," I said. My chair scraped loudly against the stone patio as I pushed it back. "Elise, come on," Bruce said, chuckling again, trying to soften the blow. "Like this was just a difference of opinion. Let's not do this now." But we already had. I picked up my bag, keys trembling in my hand. "You spent my mother's survival on leather seats and Bluetooth." And then I walked away. Back in my apartment, the quiet felt sharper than usual, like the walls knew what had just happened. I closed the door gently, set my keys in the tray, and stood there for a long moment, still in my shoes, purse hanging from my shoulder like a weight I couldn't shrug off. I'd replayed it a dozen times during the drive, my father's chuckle, my mother's silence, the sound of my fork clinking against porcelain. But what haunted me most was the clarity. They had chosen. And I wasn't on the list. I walked over to the kitchen counter and pulled my phone from my bag. Opened the bank app. My thumb hovered for a second before I tapped into the transfers. There it was. $15,000 wired to my parents' joint account 2 weeks ago. Labeled, "For Mom's surgery urgent." I scrolled back. Another transfer caught my eye. $8,000 to Lindsay, 2 months ago. Labeled, "Hope this helps with treatment, get better soon." I hadn't thought twice about that one. She told me she was going through something, therapies, she'd said vaguely. Mental health, emotional exhaustion. I didn't ask too many questions. I just wired the money because that's what family does. I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands suddenly cold. The couch across from me still had the throw blanket I'd sent to Mom after her biopsy. It was lavender, her favorite color. I'd picked it out myself, soft and warm, something to remind her she wasn't alone. Now I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe she had been, just not in the way I thought. I called Jordan. Jordan has been my best friend since sophomore year of college, the kind of person who always answers, even if it's 2 a.m. or she's halfway through a Pilates class. She picked up on the second ring. "Elise, everything okay?" "They spent it," I said, a pause. "Wait, your mom's surgery money. They bought Lindsay a new car." "What?" I closed my eyes. "An SUV. Heated seats," Lindsay said, like that was the priority. Jordan didn't speak at first. She knew how much I'd been holding on for this operation. I'd moved meetings, picked up overtime, said no to things that mattered to me just so I could send every spare dollar. "Elise, I don't even know what to say." They didn't even try to hide it. I pulled the laptop in front of me, opening Lindsay's social media out of sheer masochism. There it was. A shiny photo from 4 days ago. Lindsay posing next to a midnight blue SUV, sunglasses pushed up into her hair. The caption read, "Finally upgraded." Blessed beyond measure blue dizzy, the comments were full of emojis and congratulations. I turned the screen toward the wall. I couldn't look at it anymore. I said slowly, "I'm going to dig deeper, something doesn't add up." Jordan hesitated. "What do you mean?" "The money to Lindsay," I murmured, opening a new tab. She said it was for treatment. But what kind of therapy costs $8,000 up front and never gets mentioned again? "Elise," Jordan said cautiously, "don't drive yourself crazy." "I'm not paranoid, I'm curious." Another silence. Then her voice softened. "Okay, so what's the plan?" I didn't answer right away. I was already pulling up old texts, bank screenshots, scanning emails for hospital confirmations that were never actually sent. "They used my love against me, Jordan," I said finally. And then, quieter, "I just want the truth." 2 days later, I found myself parked outside a beige building with 2 clean windows and a half-dead ficus by the entrance. The sign out front read, "Marigold Wellness Center." This was where Lindsay claimed she'd been going for therapy, twice a week. EMDR sessions, she'd said vaguely when I first offered to help. I hadn't asked for details, didn't want to pry. Now I wished I had. I got out of the car and walked into the reception area. It was quiet, almost unnervingly so. A small fountain gurgled in the corner beside a tray of sad-looking brochures. A young woman at the front desk looked up and gave me a polite smile. "Hi, can I help you?" "Yes," I said, trying to sound casual. "I'm just trying to confirm if my sister was ever a patient here." "Lindsay Rourke. She mentioned coming here recently, and I'm just trying to make sure her records are in order." The receptionist's smile faltered slightly. "I'm sorry, are you her guardian or legal representative?" I gave a small, sheepish laugh. "Oh no, just her sister. She asked me to help sort some billing things, but honestly I think she mixed up the location. Maybe it was a different Marigold." The receptionist gave a small nod and turned to her computer. "What's her last name again?" "Rourke, Lindsay Rourke." A few keystrokes, the click of a mouse. Then a pause. "I'm sorry," she said, glancing back at me. "There's no one by that name in our system. Are you sure it was here?" I nodded slowly, even though my stomach had already dropped. "Yeah, I'm sure." "Sorry," she said again, a little softer this time. "I hope you find what you're looking for." Oh, I thanked her, stepped outside and sat behind the wheel of my car, the sun now too bright through the windshield. No records, no appointments, no billing history, nothing. I stared ahead, letting it settle in. My jaw was clenched so tightly it ached. Lindsay hadn't just accepted money she didn't need. She had made up a whole lie around it, and I had believed her, without question, without a single receipt. I didn't even realize I had started talking out loud until I heard myself whisper, "They lied, all of them." I could still hear Dad's voice at brunch. We figured she didn't have much time anyway. That wasn't ignorance, that was choice. I put the car in drive and pulled into the back lot behind the clinic, turned off the engine. I needed a minute. The silence in the car wrapped around me like static. How many other stories had I bought into? How many other times had I looked the other way, too busy, too trusting, too hopeful? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Lindsay's number. My finger hovered over the call button. No, not yet. Instead, I dialed, waited, and smiled when she answered. Elise. Hey Linz, just checking in, how's everything going? Feeling any better? A pause. She hadn't expected warmth. Oh yeah, better, you know. Still a journey? Yeah, of course. I just remembered your last session was this week, right? Another pause. Tuesday. I waited. You said it was EMDR, right? Yeah, it's intense, but good. I said, casually glancing at the building beside me. Still at Marigold? Long pause. Yeah, same place. I smiled, cold and quiet. Good, just checking. Listen, I gotta run, we'll talk soon. She mumbled something in return and hung up. I leaned back in my seat, phone resting in my lap. Oh, I was sure. Lindsay hadn't just taken the money. She'd taken it with a lie wrapped around it, sealed in guilt and sprinkled with just enough vulnerability to make me send it without hesitation. And our parents, they had let me believe Mom's life came first. They watched me drain my savings while pretending the operation was scheduled. They let me believe we were in this together. But they weren't trying to save Mom. They were protecting their favorite child from struggle, from accountability, from life. I started the engine. The next conversation wouldn't be a phone call, it would be face to face. And this time, I'd be the one asking the questions. I pulled into my parents' driveway just after 6. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the porch, painting everything gold, but it felt like walking into a storm. Their house looked exactly the same as it always had. White shutters, porch swing, little ceramic frog by the front steps. You wouldn't know from the outside that the people inside had carved open my trust like it was their birthright. I didn't knock. The front door creaked open and I stepped inside. The smell of lemon-scented wood polish clinging to the air like everything here was pretending to be clean. They were in the living room, mid-conversation. My mother sat curled up in the armchair, thin blanket over her knees, her eyes trained on the TV but not watching it. My father was sipping tea from a chipped mug that said One Dad in faded blue paint. Elise, my mother said, startled. Is everything okay? Bruce stood quickly, nervous. You didn't call. No, I didn't. My voice was steady, too steady, and that made him uneasy. I need to talk to you, both of you, I said, holding up the manila folder I had brought. And before you ask, no, I'm not here to argue, I'm here to clarify. Bruce folded his arms. Clarify what exactly? I dropped the folder on the coffee table with a soft thud. That you lied and used me. My mom's face paled, but Bruce forced a grin. Honey, come on. No, not honey, not right now. I opened the folder, sliding out copies of the wire transfers. One labeled Mom's surgery, the other Lindsay's therapy. I went to Marigold, I said, voice calm but cutting. There's no record of Lindsay ever being a patient, not once. Bruce flinched but didn't speak. I also checked with the hospital. There's no operation scheduled, no pre-surgical testing, nothing since the diagnosis consult, just follow-up appointments marked tentative. My mom finally spoke. Elise, we were going to tell you. When? I asked. After the money ran out, Bruce's voice dropped low. We were going to pay you back. No, you weren't, I said, because you never even told me you were using it for something else. You made that decision in silence and let me believe I was helping save her life. He opened his mouth to respond, but I held up my hand. I'm not here to argue, I'm here to show you what I know, because I want to hear you say it out loud. I tapped the photo I had printed, Lindsay standing beside her new SUV. You bought her a car with the money, not just any car, a fully loaded SUV with my money. Bruce sat back down slowly. She needed a safe vehicle. She's been through a lot. We've all been through a lot, I snapped. But only one of us emptied her savings trying to take care of someone else. Only one of us gave without asking for anything back. My mom's voice was barely audible. It wasn't supposed to go this far. But it did, Mom, I said, softer now. And you let it. She looked at me then, really looked. Her hands trembled in her lap. I didn't know how to stop it. You didn't try. For a moment, no one spoke. Just the hum of the refrigerator down the hall and the faint buzz of the TV. No one was watching. Then I reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a flash drive. I placed it on the table. "What's that?" Bruce asked. "A backup of my call recordings, the one with Lindsay where she confirms she's still at Marigold, 2 days after they told me she had finished treatment." Bruce's eyes narrowed. "You recorded her." "I recorded myself. I needed proof. I trusted you once and got played. That won't happen again." There was a shift in the room, a quiet realignment of power. "You can't just come in here and act like a prosecutor," Bruce barked, defensive now. "We're your parents." "And I'm your daughter," I replied. "Not your retirement plan, not your ATM, not your fixer, your daughter, the one who deserved honesty, not betrayal." My mother's eyes welled up with tears, but I didn't let them sway me. "I came here tonight because I wanted to give you the chance to say it. To own it." Bruce stared at the floor. "We thought she didn't have much time left. We didn't see the point in pouring more money into something that might not work." I took a step back, feeling like the air had been knocked from my lungs. "So you gambled with her life." Silence. "You made peace with her dying," I whispered. "As long as Lindsay got a new car." My mom's voice cracked. "We didn't think she had long. We didn't think it mattered." I nodded slowly, trying to keep the sob out of my throat. "Well, it mattered to me." I turned toward the door. "And now it matters to a lawyer." Bruce stood, alarmed. "You're going to sue us?" "No, I'm going to reclaim what's mine, every dollar, every lie, every stolen choice." As I walked out, my father called my name once. But I didn't stop, not this time. Mr. Grant's office sat quietly on the third floor of a tan stucco building near downtown. No windows, just a clean brass nameplate and a waiting room with chairs that looked barely used. The silence here wasn't heavy, it was intentional. The kind of quiet that made you listen to yourself more carefully. I needed that. He was in his 60s, sharp eyes, graying beard, and a calm that made you feel like even the worst mess could be unraveled if you had enough paperclips and the right truth. "I've reviewed everything you sent me," he said, tapping a folder of printed emails, transfer receipts, and screenshots. "You're organized, that helps." "I had to be," I replied. They were counting on me being too emotional to follow through. He nodded once, like he'd heard that before, probably had. "They used funds you explicitly labeled for medical use and redirected them for personal gain," he said. "On paper, that's misappropriation. The fact that it's within a family doesn't erase liability, it just makes it emotionally messier." I shifted in my chair. "I'm not looking to ruin them. But you are looking to reclaim what was taken," he said, not unkindly. "Stop them from doing it again." I nodded. He leaned back, thoughtful. "We'll need to document everything. I want copies of those recordings, timestamps on all the transfers, and if you have any text messages where your intentions were clear, send those too." I pulled out a manila envelope from my tote and handed it over. "Already printed." He cracked a smile. "You're good." "No," I said. "I'm angry, that's different." He studied me for a moment, then closed the folder. "You have a strong case. Be prepared, they'll fight back. Not legally maybe, but emotionally, family guilt is a deep well." "They've already started," I said. "Phone calls, guilt trips, voice notes from my sister telling me I'm tearing the family apart." He tilted his head. "And how are you doing with all of that?" It wasn't the question I expected, especially not from a lawyer, but it caught me off guard in a good way. "I feel like a villain," I said honestly. "Even though I know I'm not." He nodded again. "That's common. Especially for women. You're socialized to keep the peace, to be the fixer, but Elise," he leaned forward. "Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel, it makes you sane." I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from crying. "The paper trail is strong, but what makes it stronger is your clarity. So let me ask you this, what's your goal?" I didn't hesitate. "To get back what they stole from me," I said, "and to make sure they never get to do it again to me or anyone else." He opened a fresh legal pad and jotted something down. "Then we'll start with a demand letter. Certified, formal, polite, but unmistakably serious. We'll give them a deadline to repay the funds or else we pursue civil litigation." I nodded. "And Elise?" "Yeah, this may take time. The wheels of justice are slow, especially with family. Are you ready to keep going even when it gets ugly?" I looked him in the eye. "They've already taken enough from me. I won't let them take my spine too." The office was so still after that, even the hum of the overhead light seemed to quiet in respect. "I'll draft the letter tonight," he said finally. "You'll have the first version to review in the morning." As I walked out into the cool late afternoon, the air felt different, like something had shifted just slightly, just enough. I wasn't just the daughter who gave and gave. I was the woman who knew the truth now. And I wasn't backing down. They started calling the next morning. First it was my father. 3 times in a row, I didn't answer. Then my mother, her voicemail trembling with just the right balance of wounded and disappointed. Elise, sweetheart, you can't possibly mean to take this to court. Think about what you're doing. You're breaking up the family. And then Lindsay, of course. Her first voice note was just under a minute long, rambling, dramatic, overly sweet in the way someone sounds when they think they're being clever. Hey, so I saw your little letter, she said, like it was a joke. Honestly, I didn't even realize you were this upset. If you wanted the money back, you could have just said something else. We're family, you don't need to drag lawyers into this. I didn't reply. She followed up that night with another one. This time the tone shifted, slightly sharper. Do you really want Mom going through all this stress right now? Her health isn't great, Elise. If something happens to her because you're making a scene, she trailed off dramatically, letting the guilt do the work. I played the message on speaker while I cooked dinner, letting it simmer like background noise. Then I hit delete. The next day, they changed tactics. Bruce texted me directly. Let's just be reasonable, you don't need this mess. Neither do we, we'll figure something out, no need for courtrooms. It would have been easier if they'd screamed, raged, thrown insults. But this passive-aggressive pleading laced with performative heartbreak, this was worse, because it meant they still believed they were the victims. I lasted until Thursday before I caved and called Jordan. She picked up on the first ring. Say the word and I'll draft a cease and desist myself. I watch enough true crime. I laughed. God, I needed that. They're swarming, I said, sitting cross-legged on my couch. I feel like I'm in a slow-motion car crash and I'm the only one wearing a seatbelt. Jordan was quiet for a beat. Then, do you feel like you're still doing the right thing? I stared at the coffee table where Mr. Grant's draft letter still sat unopened. Yes, but I also feel exhausted, like I'm playing the villain in a story I didn't even write. You're not the villain, she said firmly. You're the narrator, they just don't like the new chapter. That landed. Later that evening, I found myself outside my therapist's office. I hadn't planned to go, but the pressure had been building for days. Dr. Kaplan was her usual calm, sharp-eyed self. The kind of person who could spot a buried truth 3 sentences before you said it out loud. I feel like I'm hurting everyone, I told her. And all I'm doing is defending my own boundaries. And why does defending your boundaries feel like hurting them? She asked. Because they've convinced me that love only exists when I'm useful. I hadn't meant to say it. But once it came out, it hung in the room, painfully honest. Dr. Kaplan nodded slowly. Elise, when someone benefits from your lack of boundaries, they will always see your strength as cruelty. That doesn't make it true. That night, I sat in my bedroom with the lights off, just me and the soft hum of the ceiling fan. I replayed all the messages, all the guilt, all the expectations. And then I opened Mr. Grant's letter. 3 pages. Calm, professional, devastatingly clear. It outlined the funds I had sent, the evidence of misrepresentation, and a formal demand for repayment within 21 days. If not, we would proceed with a civil claim. I signed it. And as I sealed the envelope, I whispered to myself, this isn't revenge, it's restoration. Let them call. Let them twist. I had a spine now. And I wasn't going to apologize for it. I wasn't looking to find more. I thought the betrayal was contained. 15 grand rerouted to an SUV, another 8,000 funneled into Lindsay's lie. That should have been enough pain for one lifetime. But the thing about lies is, once one cracks, the others start shifting. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the official demand letter signed and mailed, when I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank statements. Not for any reason, just curiosity. Maybe a little dread. I scrolled. Line after line of transactions, most of them familiar: rent, groceries, utility bills. And then a cluster of odd charges caught my eye. Small amounts, scattered over the past 3 years. Outgoing wire CAREWELL medical transfer KRURK/DIAG MGMT, recurring family wellness group. I frowned. Those names were similar to the real providers we'd used for Mom's earlier treatments, but not the same. I clicked on one, then another. They were all payments to accounts I didn't recognize. And yet, they were all labeled as medical expenses. I opened a spreadsheet. I started cataloging. 2 hours later, I had tracked nearly $38,000 sent over the last 4 years. Every single transfer disguised as some kind of health expense. My hands were cold as I typed. Some were large $4, $800, $3,200, but most were small enough to avoid suspicion. Enough to make me think I was doing good, helping with treatments, covering labs or home care equipment. I searched every provider name, every account ID. And then I found it. One of the routing numbers matched a private checking account under Bruce Rourke. I sat there for a full minute, just breathing. It hadn't just been the past few months. This had been happening for years. They'd been redirecting funds through dummy medical expenses into their own account. Over and over again. I remembered every moment I'd picked up an extra shift. Every night I'd skipped dinner just to make a deadline and keep my income steady. All while they were rerouting my support into their savings. Or worse, into Lindsay's future. I forwarded everything to Mr. Grant. Included my notes, links, screenshots, a log of conversations where I'd asked what the charges were for, only to be told lab fees or routine costs. He replied within the hour. This expands the scope significantly. We may be looking at systematic misappropriation with intent to defraud. Prepare for escalation. I didn't cry, not right away. But later that night, after brushing my teeth, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And it hit me. They didn't just take my money. They took my trust, wrapped it in guilt, and sold it back to me as family duty. I didn't know if Mom had known. But Bruce, he orchestrated it, with Lindsay at his side. And I had paid for it. In full. The next day, I sat in Mr. Grant's office again. The air was heavier this time. This kind of pattern, he said slowly, tapping the spreadsheet I'd sent, shows planning. This wasn't a one-time mistake, it was a deliberate operation. They knew you wouldn't question it if it was labeled as something noble. I was raised to be noble, I said bitterly. To give without asking. His eyes softened. That's not nobility, that's manipulation. We revised the demand letter, added new exhibits. Raised the damages. I'll notify them of the update by certified mail, he said. They'll know we're serious. I stood to leave. My legs felt heavier than usual, but something in my spine had gone steel again. I won't stop this time, I said. Mr. Grant didn't look surprised. I know. And as I walked out, I felt it, that cold, quiet place inside me where grief used to sit. Now it held a new fire, because now I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting for the version of me that should have never had to ask twice. The envelope arrived 2 days later. Heavy linen paper. Gold crest in the corner. A law office I didn't recognize. I stared at it on my counter for a long time before opening it. Part of me still hoped it was a mistake, a bluff, but it wasn't. Inside was a formal counter-lawsuit notice, filed by Bruce and Karen Rourke, claiming emotional distress, character defamation, and most insulting of all, elder abuse. I laughed. Out loud. One sharp, bitter sound. They were suing me for exposing the truth. The letter accused me of publicly maligning family reputation, of causing undue stress to my ailing mother, and of initiating harassment campaigns via legal threats. I dropped the papers on the table and walked to the window, needing air. The sky outside was overcast, thick and still, like something was about to break. They weren't sorry. They were retaliating. By noon, it was online. A local news outlet, small but just big enough, ran a human interest story titled, "Daughter Turns on Parents in Inheritance Feud, Accusations and Broken Trust." The article quoted Bruce word for word. "We never imagined Elise would drag our family through court. We did everything for her. We only ever wanted the best." My photo, pulled from LinkedIn, was featured at the top. Next to it, a cropped shot of Bruce helping Mom into a car, her face strained in the sunlight. The comments were the worst part. What kind of daughter sues her own sick mother? These kids today, no respect. Another greedy millennial, I'm sure she's mad she didn't get the house. I closed the page. 30 minutes later, Lindsay posted on Instagram a black and white photo of her holding Mom's hand in the hospital. The caption read, "Watching her decline while fighting her own child in court, no one deserves this. Broken heart, we're staying strong, Mom." Over 600 likes. Dozens of comments. Tears, prayers, hearts, and all of it a weapon. They were rewriting the story in real time, framing themselves as the victims and me as the ungrateful daughter with a vendetta. I called Jordan. She picked up on the first ring. "They're smearing me," I said, my voice flat. "Publicly, legally, everywhere." There was a pause, then, "Do you want to come over?" "No." I was already pulling open my laptop. "I want to fight back." I spent the next 4 hours compiling everything, emails, text threads, bank statements, even video clips from family gatherings where Bruce joked about me footing all the adult stuff. But I didn't post anything. Not yet. Instead, I sent everything to Mr. Grant, who responded in 20 minutes. The lawsuit is meritless. It's a scare tactic, designed to pressure you into silence. Don't engage publicly, we respond in court. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to show the world what really happened. But I didn't, because that's what they wanted. They wanted me loud and reactive. I chose silence, for now. That night I sat with Jordan on her porch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea while the wind rustled the trees around us. They're trying to ruin my name, I said. And I don't even care about reputation. I just care that people believe them. Jordan reached over, placing her hand over mine. They might win the public pity party, she said, but they're going to lose where it matters. You have the facts, the proof, the law, I nodded, but something still ached. Not just the betrayal, not just the smear. It was the quiet knowledge that they had planned this. That when they realized I wasn't backing down, they didn't apologize, they escalated. The next morning, I went to the courthouse to file my official response with Mr. Grant by my side. I wore a gray blazer and a calm face. In the elevator, he looked at me and said, "You're doing well, better than most." I didn't feel like it, but I smiled anyway. Before we walked in, I paused. "They're going to try and make me regret this," I said. "They already are," he replied. "But that doesn't mean they're right." The courtroom wasn't crowded, just a preliminary hearing, but I felt eyes on me anyway. My father didn't look at me. My mother wore sunglasses indoors, her hand clutching Lindsay's like she was a victim at a funeral. But I looked at them, all of them, because I had nothing to hide. As the clerk called our case number, I whispered in my own mind, "Let them lie. I'll show the truth. Let them smear, I'll survive, because you can't smear what refuses to be silent." And I wasn't done yet. The world went quiet. Not silent, there were still phone pings, email dings, and the occasional doorbell ring from neighbors pretending they weren't reading the article. But something inside me quieted. It was the stillness that comes after you've lost too much to care about appearances. When you're done defending yourself and ready to let the truth do what it came to do. The court date was set. 3 weeks. 21 days to gather everything. To steady myself. To sit in the wreckage of a family I thought I could still love through anything. And choose something else. I turned off social media, deleted the apps. I told Jordan she could check for me and send screenshots if anything legal came up, but I didn't want to see the grief porn Lindsay was posting. Instead, I focused on building my case. Every night after work, I'd open my laptop and sit cross-legged on the floor surrounded by files, receipts, emails, text threads, time-stamped call logs. I started color coding. Yellow for lies, blue for proof. Red for direct contradictions. I had more red tabs than anything else. The work was tedious but strangely soothing, like sorting a 1,000-piece puzzle that you already knew would reveal something ugly, but you wanted to see it finished anyway. And through it all, my phone kept ringing. Unknown numbers, private calls, voicemails that started polite and ended bitter. I listened to one, just one. It was Lindsay again. Her voice cracked halfway through, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine or practiced. "You're really going through with this? Against Mom? You know she's scared, you know she doesn't sleep, you know she could die, Elise, and this is what you choose to do." I wanted to scream at the recording, "This is what you did," but instead I just deleted it. Jordan came over every other night to check on me. She brought snacks I didn't eat, wine I barely sipped, and a fierce, protective energy I didn't realize I needed so badly. "I've never seen you like this," she said one night, watching me label folders. "It's like you're a lawyer now." I smiled weakly. "No, I'm just a daughter who finally got tired of being the deposit machine." She nodded. "You know, no matter how this ends, you've already won." I raised an eyebrow. "How do you figure?" "Because you stopped pretending. You saw the ugliest version of them and you didn't excuse it, you named it." That night, I went to sleep with every binder neatly stacked beside my bed. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't dream about them. The morning after, I met with Mr. Grant again. We sat in his office surrounded by legal pads and open laptops. "You've been thorough," he said, flipping through a stack of my notes. "Almost obsessively so." "I need to be," I replied. "They won't come to court to tell the truth, they'll come to perform, and I want to be ready." He nodded. "We'll submit this as evidence under the claim of misrepresentation, financial exploitation, and emotional manipulation. You've got a solid foundation." I looked down at my hands, they were still steady. "I'm not afraid of the courtroom," I said. "I know. What I'm afraid of," I added softly, "is what comes after when there's nothing left to fix." Mr. Grant leaned forward. That's not your job anymore, fixing them. I swallowed hard. I know. The days blurred after that. Mornings at work. Evenings with files. Short runs to clear my head. Nights filled with rereading every piece of evidence until the truth felt like armor instead of weight. I stopped answering family calls altogether. Even my mother's. I told myself it wasn't cruelty. It was clarity, because if she wanted to speak like a mother, she would have called before signing that lawsuit. Now I was just another name in the docket, and I was ready for that. The night before court, I packed everything into one large binder. I laid out my blazer, polished my shoes. Then I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling, whispering the same sentence over and over again. Truth doesn't need drama to be heard. That was what I would take into the courtroom. Not rage, not tears, just truth. Let them scream, let them twist, let them perform. I had nothing left to lose and everything left to prove. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not the air exactly, just the energy. Sterile, formal, like nothing human could touch the walls. I sat at the petitioner's table, my binder open in front of me, tabs like battle flags, each one a moment I'd been gaslit, dismissed, or used. Mr. Grant sat beside me, calm as ever, his glasses low on his nose as he reviewed our notes one last time. Across the aisle, my parents sat with their attorney. Lindsay was there too, in a too-tight black dress, her eyes darting around like she expected paparazzi. Bruce wouldn't meet my gaze. My mother glanced at me once and quickly looked away. The judge entered, we rose, my legs held steady. This was it. Opening arguments came first. Mr. Grant's voice was level, precise. He laid out the facts, clear documentation of over $50,000 sent with specified purpose, evidence of misdirection of funds, fraudulent representations made by family members, a pattern of financial abuse masked as familial need. He didn't need theatrics. The truth was compelling enough. Their lawyer followed with a saccharine smile and a script that made me want to laugh out loud. Elise Rourke, he said, as if I were a stranger, has sadly misunderstood the intentions of a loving family. What she calls misuse was simply flexibility in a time of emotional distress. What she calls fraud was a parent's attempt to balance impossible choices. I didn't flinch. Let them sell pity, I brought receipts. The judge asked for direct testimony. I stood, palms dry, voice even. I walked through every transaction, when I sent it, what I was told it was for, what I later discovered. Then I played the recording. Lindsay's voice stammering through a lie about therapy she never received. The courtroom went still. Next, I handed over the clinic's statement, no record of any treatment under the name Lindsay Rourke. My mother turned her face away. Bruce stared straight ahead. Mr. Grant presented the spreadsheet, the 4-year trail of doctored expenses, misnamed transfers, all leading back to Bruce's private account. The judge's expression didn't change. But I saw the moment his pen paused. That was enough. When Bruce was asked to respond, his voice shook, but not with remorse, just anger. We did what we thought was right, he said. We didn't think Elise would come after her own family like this. It's shameful. I finally spoke, eyes locked on his. That money was for her surgery, her chance to live. You didn't just take my trust, you took her time. He didn't answer. The judge looked down at the files, then at us. I've heard enough for today. Judgment will be delivered next session. But I'll say this, the facts are not on the respondent's side. We stood to leave, and for the first time in months I felt taller. This wasn't over. But the truth was finally standing up in court, and it was louder than all their lies combined. The judgment came 1 week later. I was at work when the call came in. Mr. Grant didn't waste time with build-up. You won, he said, his voice steady but proud. Full reimbursement of all documented funds plus damages. The judge called their actions calculated and sustained deception. I swallowed hard. So they have to pay. They're being ordered to liquidate assets, vehicles, investments, their second property. Lindsay's SUV is first on the list. I didn't speak. Not out of shock, but because I didn't feel joy. Not exactly, it was something else. A heavy, grounded knowing. Justice doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it lands like a quiet door finally closing. That night I stood outside my parents' house. I hadn't planned to, but the drive just happened. I parked across the street, headlights off, engine running. The porch light was on. Lindsay's SUV sat crooked in the driveway, a red envelope from the court tucked under the wiper. They'd see it when they woke up. Or maybe they already had. I didn't go to the door, there was nothing left to say, but part of me wanted them to know this was the cost. They'd gambled with my love, with Mom's health, with every ounce of trust I had left. And now they'd pay for it not just in money but in silence. Because I wasn't calling to gloat. I wasn't answering their voicemails anymore. I wasn't coming to Christmas, or birthdays, or hospital bedsides. I was done. 3 days later, the surgery was scheduled. I paid for it myself, quietly, fully, no family funds, no GoFundMe, just me. Mom didn't speak when I visited her before the operation. She just stared out the window. I didn't press her. I covered it, I told her gently, because no one else would. She didn't thank me. But her eyes closed slowly, like maybe, just maybe, she understood. And when I left, I didn't look back. I didn't need her apology anymore. I didn't need any of theirs, because this was the last time I cleaned up their mess. The silence afterward didn't feel empty. It felt earned. In that silence I built something new, routine, boundaries, peace. Mom recovered. I visited her twice a week at the assisted living facility I helped choose. I stayed for 20 minutes, brought books she never opened, and left before guilt could linger. We spoke, but we didn't pretend. And I never asked about Dad. Lindsay moved out of state. Her car. Gone, her social media. Quiet, and me. I learned something I should have known years ago. Some family ties aren't broken. They're cut clean and necessary. The quiet didn't feel strange anymore. After everything, the stillness became a kind of rhythm. Predictable, safe, mine. I moved Mom into a small, sunlit assisted living facility 10 minutes from my apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, calm, and kind. She didn't fight it, not once. Maybe she didn't have the strength. Or maybe she finally understood the damage. I visited twice a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays, always at 4:00, never longer than 30 minutes. We talked about the weather, her garden, books she didn't finish. I brought her peppermint tea, replaced her throw blankets, and listened to the silence between her sentences. We never talked about court, or Dad, or Lindsay. I'd made sure the paperwork was airtight, legal separation of finances, zero access to my accounts, no rights of decision-making, everything notarized, witnessed, protected. She wouldn't be able to ask again, and I wouldn't have to say no. I told Jordan over coffee one afternoon, it's not about revenge anymore. She nodded. It's about control. No, I said, stirring my cup slowly. It's about survival. I was no longer the daughter desperate to prove her worth through sacrifice. I was the woman who drew the line, who stood in court and told the truth, even when the truth made everyone else uncomfortable. And now I had space to breathe. Boundaries weren't punishment. They were grace. They were proof that healing didn't require permission. And I didn't owe anyone a second chance to hurt me. 2 years later, I stood at the podium under soft stage lights, my hands steady on the microphone. The room was warm, filled with quiet faces in elegant clothes, seated at round tables, their name tags glittering in the soft glow. Behind me a banner read, Financial Futures, a gala for survivors of economic abuse. I was the final speaker, the story they saved for last. My name is Elise Rourke, I began, my voice low but clear. And I was robbed by the people who were supposed to love me most. I saw heads lift. Eyes meet mine, some already knew. Some didn't. All of them listened. My family didn't break into my house. They didn't threaten me. They didn't yell or steal with force. They smiled. They called me kind. And they drained me dollar by dollar under the banner of love. A murmur moved through the crowd, recognition. I wired tens of thousands of dollars for medical bills that were never paid. I sent money for therapy that never happened. I trusted that helping my family meant protecting my mother's life. I paused, then looked straight into the crowd. They chose a car over her surgery. Gasps, silence, no performance, just truth. I took them to court, I continued, and I won. But this isn't about revenge, it's about reclamation. I reclaimed my money, yes, but more importantly, I reclaimed myself. I glanced toward the front table. Jordan sat there smiling, a soft pride in her eyes. When I set boundaries, they called me cruel. When I pursued legal action, they called me ungrateful. And when I told the truth, they called me. I stepped back slightly from the mic. I learned that silence protects the wrong people. That guilt is a leash people tug on when they're afraid you'll walk too far away. And that survival means letting go of who they want you to be so you can finally become who you were always meant to be. A few people stood. Then more. Then the whole room. Applause didn't crash, it rose, slow and steady. Not for drama, but for endurance. I blinked back the tears. Not because I was sad, but because I wasn't anymore. When I stepped off the stage, a woman in her 50s reached out and touched my hand. You said what I've never been able to, she whispered. I nodded, I understood. Outside, the city lights blinked softly across the water. I wrapped my coat tighter around me and stood there for a while alone. Not lonely, not bitter, just whole. And if someone were to ask me now what justice feels like, I'd tell them it feels like walking away without looking back.